ahead and get started. All right. All right. Cool. Marja? Whichever you prefer. Is it going to be easier for you to do your own slides? Cool.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Just arrow.
Arrow? Yeah.
It's just the arrow. Okay. All right. Well, good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
Good evening to those online as well. Can you all hear?
Yes.
Okay. Awesome. It's an honor to be here with you all this evening. Hopefully, your fourth and last day this week has been great and informative for you all. My name is Marja Farrow, and I'm representing the Farrow Group. We're a demolition company here located in Detroit, and I'll talk a little bit more about me and our company. So I am a D girl, born and raised in Detroit. Love Detroit, all things Detroit. Went to Cass Tech, also graduated from the University of Michigan for undergraduate and grad school. I am an urban planner by education and trade, and I am a public servant, or have been for most of my career. I started as an intern at the Office of the Ombudsman in the city of Detroit, and then when I left, I was Deputy Director of the Planning and Development Department. So about 12 years or so I spent with the city of Detroit. After that, I went to the city of Benton Harbor and was the assistant city manager and the director of economic development. So you've probably seen shows like Married to Real Estate, Married to Medicine. So I married to construction. So this is how I found myself in the construction industry. My husband, Michael Farrow, is the one who started the Farrow Group. He is a truck driver and an operator, and he's the one who started the company. I am the Chief Growth Officer at Farrow Group, and I've been there since about 2016. And so more about me, I love learning. So there are a lot of, and obviously you guys probably do too, that's why you're in this class. And so I say I'm a student of learning. And so a couple of programs that I found helpful that you may or may not have heard of, the Goldman Sachs 10,000 Small Businesses Program, graduated from that in cohort 10. I recently completed earlier this year the ICIC Building for Growth program, and that was specifically for construction contractors, and it was a cohort nationally, and it was a pilot program, so you'll probably see more information about that. They have committed to doing that program over the next several years in the city of Detroit, so when the applications come out, I'll make sure I'll put that on the resource list, so feel free to check that out. And then most recently, I graduated from the Motor City Contractor Fund, which was a local program focused on contractor growth and development. Matter of fact, we just had our graduation, I want to say 2 months ago, and that was a pilot program as well, so they are looking to launch that, and basically it's a lot of speakers, but there's also a financing and funding option, so I highly recommend it. If you all, once they open it up, I'll share that as well. I don't know if it's open yet, but I think it's going to be opening up soon, but definitely something worth checking out. So about the Farrow Group, we are actually celebrating 25 years in business this year. My husband is a second generation owner, not of this company, but his dad had his own demolition company, so he's a second generation person in the demolition business. And then we also have 2 adult sons who, one works in the company, but one also has been trained to work heavy equipment, etc., but he works for another company. And just a little bit about the inspiration behind how Farrow Group came to be. So my husband, as an equipment operator in Detroit at the time, it was hard for him to find opportunities to operate heavy equipment. He would go to job sites and basically they just want you to run a Bobcat or something small. So he left the city, went to New Jersey, and was allowed to operate all types of machinery, especially heavy equipment. Came back to Detroit. I did some experience, got some more experience, and decided I'm going to start my own company. So even today, he can still, as an owner for 25 years, you can still see him out there wrecking the building. He just did one on cast and over there today. So he's a very involved and active owner, which is good. I'm trying to pull him out a little bit, but it's good. So also want to just share and think it's important as you think about company culture, the values. And so our values are competency, safety, and integrity, and I'll talk a little bit more about those, but those are things that are really, really important to us and that we make sure are carried out through everybody who is working with the organization and who we partner with as well. You probably can't see this flyer, but I also just want to talk a little bit about the services. So we do asbestos abatement and removal, dismantling and clearing. We do emergency response. An example of that might be the fire department. They have buildings that collapse with people in it. They'll call us, come get this person unburied, or, break the building down so we can access the people, etc. We've done that. Excavation, equipment removal, equipment rental. We don't do a lot of interior demolition, but we do it depending on who asks us to do it. We do have a fire and restoration company that we work closely with, and if they generally call us, we'll do it. We do site restoration, and the bulk of our work is in structural demolition. So I like to say, if anything, if it's standing, we can get it down. And we do trucking and hauling. And y'all feel free, you don't have to wait till the end. If you have any questions, feel free to jump in. Yes.
So as far as the demolition on the residential side, if we're doing build-up construction and we're going to demo houses, could we hire you to do that for our construction?
Mm-hmm. Yep. Okay, so I just wanted to share some of the certifications and licenses that we have because it's reflective of basically what the industry and what we do basically requires. As you can imagine, and some of you probably already know based on the first night of introduction, some of what I heard, construction is a very risky business. So it's a lot of regulations that you have to comply with. And so we're MDOT certified disadvantaged business enterprise. With the city of Detroit, we are Detroit headquartered, Detroit based, Detroit small business and minority based enterprise. With Wayne County, we are a county based enterprise and a small business enterprise, and then also a small business enterprise with the Wayne County Airport Authority. I will also recommend a lot of you that do construction to think about the ACDBE for the Wayne County Airport, which is basically contractors who work on the inside of the airport. So at concessions, they have different construction things. So it's basically like the SBE that we do is outside of the airport, and then they have the ACDBE certification if you want to work construction inside the airport. So if you're into rehab, anything that's related to work inside the airport, I would definitely explore that certification, and you can do that with Wayne County. We also have a state of Michigan alteration license, City of Detroit Class A wrecking license, and I think the city has 3 classes of wrecking license. So we have the highest class. We have the state of Michigan asbestos contractor license, and then the state of Michigan scrap tire hauler license. A partial list of our clients. We are trying to grow more into the federal space, but so far we've worked for the Detroit Army Corps of Engineers about 2 years ago. From the state perspective, we've worked for the State Land Bank Authority doing demolition, but we also worked previously for the Department of Natural Resources and Environment. We had a trash contract on Belle Isle, trash removal contract on Belle Isle. We do a lot of work now for Wayne County. They've recently started spending a lot more money in demolition, so they do have a pre-qualified contractors list, and we've been on that for the past, I want to say, 5 years. And then also the Wayne County Airport Authority, we've done work for them before as well. Detroit Public Schools, it's been a while since we've worked with them, but they just announced, I think, want to say 8 to 10 schools that are going to be coming down. Thank God for that. But we have worked for them in the past. And then we've worked for several municipalities, the City of Detroit, City of Inkster, Pontiac, Lincoln Park, Southgate. I mean, lots of places in Michigan. And we also, although we're Detroit based, we will go out of town. We recently did a job in Buffalo, New York, where we tore down a public housing complex. So we will travel. We've also worked for the Eastern Market Development Corporation, a multi-year contract with them, Olympia Development, Jill Credit Union, and we also do work for prime contractors in the area, because a lot of jobs that are really, really big, they'll hire a general contractor that will sub out the demolition work. So just a little bit about blight and health. You probably all know and have been talking about a lot this week. I know the first night she talked a lot about it as well, a compelling connection between health and place. And so if we think about like the social determinants of health, and zip code being a very determining factor of your health outcomes and quality of life, and specifically urban blight, which is defined as substandard housing, abandoned buildings, and vacant lots, have found to be major stressors for people that live in communities, and obviously that can affect your health and mental and emotional state. Also, and this is all from an Urban Institute study, and I think the link is actually in the notes, but I can't see it, so it's on the slides when you guys get them if you're interested in exploring this a little bit further. But neighborhoods filled with vacant or abandoned properties are linked to higher rates of mental distress, chronic illnesses, STDs, and unhealthy habits. So it is very good that our community has been addressing blight. And a lot of those interventions you guys are already working on, whether that's rehabbing vacant houses, making houses more healthy for kids and families, but it also includes things like boarding up vacant houses, making sure that they're safe and not accessible to trespassers or people who are looking to do things that shouldn't be done. And then also what we do, which is demolition of the blighted and vacant properties. Demolition and health, one of the greatest exposures for demolition, as you can imagine, and I heard a lot of you have asbestos certification, so you all know that that is asbestos. And so there are a couple of levels that we deal with asbestos exposure, the first being asbestos abatement. We are licensed and our people are trained to do abatement, but we generally sub it out. This is the only thing that we sub out. And so there are several abatement subcontractors that we work with to do this work, but it is important that properties are properly abated before they can be demolished. There are lots of instances where the structure is unsound and cannot be accessed to do a proper asbestos survey to even know where the asbestos is located on a property, or for somebody to go in and to actually abate it. And so in those instances, those are treated as ordered demolitions. And so basically you have to treat it as though it's asbestos containing material. And then there's a higher level of regulations that you have to comply with in those situations. And then also it relates to the proper hauling and disposal of material. So of course, adequately wetting everything is a big deal. Dealing with asbestos dust and making sure that dust is effectively mitigated throughout the demolition process is very, very important. And then also just talking about a culture of safety. I previously mentioned that is one of our core values. It's probably our number one value, I would say. Making sure that our employees are safe, making sure that our job sites are safe, and ultimately making sure that the communities that we work in are safe. We generally like to say we like to leave a community, a street, a block in a better condition than when we arrived here. You know, we are all Detroiters. Our family live in Detroit. We care about Detroit. So when we go into a property, we treat it as if, you know, our grandmother was living next door or our mom or something like that. So making sure that employees know how to go ahead.
I just had a quick question.
Yes.
So when you guys go in different communities, is there any form or any types of engagement that you do with the residents or business owners that either work or reside in the areas that you work in?
It depends. So if we have a federally funded project, we might have a Section 3 requirement. Are you guys familiar with that? Okay, so Section 3 basically says that you have to hire from the project area or at least make them aware of opportunities. And so we do that in areas, reach out to them about job opportunities. But sometimes some communities, especially like Detroit, and there are a couple of other that require you to go on the block, a couple, I want to say 3 houses each way in a block, and notify the residents that you're going to be demolishing a property and to give them advance notice so they can prepare to be, whether it's be at home and close your windows, or it's, you know, sometimes it might be move your vehicles so that our equipment can get in, or just make them aware that, you know, we're going to be in the neighborhood doing this, so they don't just wake up one day seeing machines next to them like, what the heck is going on? So in a lot of times in instances where it's not required, we'll still do it just because we think it makes sense. Also, another point of risk and safety in the demolition process. So after we tear everything down, and a lot of times, most of the times, unless it's an alteration, which is when you will leave a foundation, most of the time there's a foundation or a basement that we have to dig out, and so there's an open hole process, and so you can't immediately backfill. No matter what community you go in, they're going to be required to inspect your open hole before you can proceed with the backfill. And so a lot of times we have to make sure, and there are lots of regulations around how you secure an open hole site. There are instances where water has gotten into a site and you don't want to make it a hazard for the community. You know, it could be kids on the block, people have gotten in the holes, drowned, animals. I mean, this hasn't happened to us, thank God, but it has happened. And so making sure that your open holes are properly secured. And then some cities have a long inspection process. I won't name any, but so you want to, sometimes, you know, you could be on a totally different job, but it also has to be somebody's job on the team. You know what, go to that open hole that we have, you know, on these sites and make sure that the fencing is still up, that it's safe, because ultimately it's still our responsibility no matter how long the inspector is taking to get there. We want to make sure that it's safe. Another thing that's related to health and safety in the demolition process is the actual backfill material. You all might have heard recently that there was a situation with the city of Detroit where a contractor put contaminated soil in over 80 holes. And now the city has to hire another contractor to go excavate those holes and refill them with different. And so as you can imagine, people living in the neighborhood, you want to make sure that what you're putting back in the hole is something that is healthy, that is clean, because we don't know a lot of times what's going to happen with these property after. So say in an instance like the city of Detroit, they have the adjacent lot program. So if you live next to a property that has been demolished and now it's vacant, you can purchase it. But if it's bad fill material in there, you want to grow a garden, you have a problem. Or if you want to build on it and it's bad material in the ground, you have a problem. So that's another area where we are very concerned. And so a lot of the backfill material, you can do clean dirt, you can do sand, and then like certain cities have regulations on which places you can use, what material they like to see, etc. You had a question?
I was wondering what was wrong with the field material. Was it like an asbestos in it or something?
So they have like all these different testing standards for soil, and I don't know exactly what was in it, but it didn't meet the city specifications for a clean field. So they do have something that's relatively new, which is called like a manufactured field. So basically what it is, you can take material like brick, etc., and they run through a crusher. And it's really, really fine, but it's still rocks and stuff. So a lot of contractors have used that, but you can only take it up so far. You can't take it all the way to the top. So I don't know exactly what it was, but it was enough to rise to the level of needing to get it out. So it must have been pretty bad, I would say. And then lastly, site finishing. Site finishing is important. Most of the times we have to put seed and straw down just to make sure that, you know, it's just not looking crazy and just a pile of dirt once you leave the site. Again, we want to make sure that the community looks better, or at least the same or better, you know, when we leave, by the time we've done our work on that block, community, etc. Creating a culture of compliance, of course, knowing the regulations that impact your operations, and you can imagine whether you're doing rehab, whether you're doing demolition, it's all type of regulations, all different agencies that regulate. And so staying on top of those regulations can be hard, but it's really, really important. It's also make sure that your staff are properly educated and trained, because it's not just enough for the owner to know. I mean, it's helpful for the owner to know, but everybody that's on that job site should know what the regulations are, the requirements, and to also, stay abreast of those changes. I mean, they don't change a lot, but there's a lot of times new guidance. I remember it was before the pandemic, so maybe about 2018 or 2019, they changed the silica rule. We weren't paying attention. At the time we didn't know, and somebody from DEQ happened to come to one of our job sites. And next thing they know, they didn't give us a violation, but they just said, you know, you have to give us your silica policy, all of this. So all of a sudden, I had to go research the regs, write a policy, you know. So it's just, you know, staying abreast of those things, making sure that you can keep your name basically clean. Thankfully, Farrow has not received any violations from Eagle, State, anybody, and prayerfully we'll stay in that, but we try really, really hard to make sure that we have a culture of compliance, to make sure that we are complying with all the laws and regulations, because again, they all, when you violate compliance, you pretty much putting the community in danger in some way. So, go ahead.
So, when you guys are going into different, cities, states, counties, you're doing your due diligence as far as the rules of that particular municipality, what are the key things that one would need to look for when they're doing this type of business in various parts of the state or the country?
Right. I would say starting
like a general website where you can get general information.
I would say starting with the permit process, that'll tell you a lot. Like each city has their own permit process. And if you read like the permit requirements, it'll tell you a lot about what they expect. And then a lot of times some cities now will have like a model scope of service or a model contract that you can take a look at and kind of see. The good thing about it is like the overarching regulations apply no matter where you are. So, DHHCAP, the federal regulations are going to be the same. OSHA requirements, they're going to be the same. And so making sure I would say even before you even bid work, looking at, a lot of times, we'll get RFPs or requests to bid, and that's the first thing I'll do. Just go to their website, look at their permit requirements, look at what the contract might say, what you have to do, anything extra. And see if it's something that really meets what your team does well.
Assuming that there's always an inspector that's got a number on that bidding package that you go to talk to them on, right?
You can.
Always. So if you want to know anything, you just go right to the inspector, and he's going to walk you through 9 times out of 10 with no problem. So you won't have a problem.
Right. And a lot of times too, going to the walkthrough meetings, even if they're not mandatory, you can find out some very helpful information, even if it's just simply building a rapport and a relationship with whoever the owner is. So we always try to make sure somebody's present, even if it's a non-mandatory bid walkthrough. Another important thing about compliance is subcontractors. A lot of times people don't pay as much attention to how their subcontractors operate, but it's very important because it's your reputation, it's your liability on the line when you work with a subcontractor. So, for example, in our case, we've never received, like I said, any anything violations like that. But on a project a few years ago, we had an abatement subcontractor who did get a violation from Eagle. So they issued it directly to him, but because he got a violation and he was our sub, the city issued us a notice basically saying, you're in violation because one of your subcontractors. And so we appealed it because we said, it's not our violation, but the city took the stance, this is your responsibility. This is your sub. This is not our problem. So, it didn't affect our record that way, but it's very important to make sure that people you partner with have the same values, have the same culture of safety, compliance, and that they're going to do things in a way that puts your company in a good light and not put you at risk. And it's also for subcontractors now, what we're finding is the insurance companies, at least in our case, are looking for or give you better rates when you have a specific contract with your subcontractor. You pass on the insurance requirements to your subcontractor, things of those nature. Those will help you not only with your operations, but help you financially because of your insurance.
That's another thing. Like, what are some of the things that could terminate your insurance coverage?
Terminate? Well, I do have an insurance slide on here, but getting a
Outside of
claim.
not paying, just in the
Getting a
field,
claim.
like in the field, like to me, is there any like specific things that you as a demolition company have to comply with to keep your insurance good and active?
So one example, and it's interesting because this is why at this slide we had an insurance renewal meeting today, but so the agent was telling me, okay, I found you a carrier that would give you a different rate, but one of the caveats, if you will, would be you can't do any for-hire trucking. Now, normally we don't do for-hire trucking, but because of all the activity that's happening on the freeway right now, when it's slow and demo, why wouldn't you? So we've actually been doing it. And so I'm like, what's the savings? And like, it's about $5,000 savings on what you would pay with your current carrier if you don't do it. And so for me, I said, no, it's not worth it. I'm not going to go with that carrier because if I know highway construction is going to be happening for the next 5 years, and if I need to be able to go work for Dan's or somebody else on the highway, $4,000 or hoping that, you know what I'm saying, picking it and then hoping they don't find out that I'm trucking. That's not gonna work. So, you know, it's stuff like that. But what we also found out is 2021, y'all remember the city had a historic rain event and a lot of people got flooded all over the city. So our office was completely flooded. The sewer basically backed up in our whole, so we had a claim. Nothing we could have did to prevent it. We had a claim. The next year, the insurance company didn't want insurance anymore. Simply because we had a claim. So, I mean, in other instances, I don't know if something that would, another thing would be, so one of the other restrictions on insurance that we have now is no wrecking balls. So if we went out and did a job and used the wrecking ball, they wouldn't cancel us, but they're not gonna cover it. So, you know, it would just be an instance of we'll pay your claim or not, but the next time go around, we're not insuring you anymore. I would say similarly to contractors, if you're thinking about partners and joint ventures, and I know teaming and all those things are important right now, and they're gaining popularity, venture protege programs, all of those things, they're great, but just make sure it's a good fit for who you're teaming with. For example, we had a JV with a local company, and it was pretty decent, but what we found out was that the way they work is not consistent with the way we work. And then we later found out that they went to another city for a pre-qualification process and tried to use the JV, which was over. We ended the JV because it was for a specific client here locally, and they went to another community and tried to pre-qualify with the JV when we weren't even at the table. So, you know, everybody ain't on the up and up. You know, that's basically what it boils down to. So just make sure if you are basically aligning yourself with somebody that they reflect your values and reflect the way you move.
Like if you
contracts too.
Right.
Yeah, it's
What you
also
say?
if you like hire subs on a contract, they're really actually working for the company.
Right.
But they'll do their own, passing their own cars out instead of passing the company that they work out. So that's like a backdoor slide too though. So that's why you have to be careful, even from your subs.
Right. Absolutely. And then I would just say violations impact your reputation and your bottom line. I think I kind of talked about it a lot, but you know, if things happen, it's on you. It can affect your insurance rating, it can affect your safety rating, and then, like I said, it can affect your reputation, which is everything when it comes to your company, right? And then just to talk a little bit about vendor and supplier relations. We like to say buy, shop, small and local, like all the time. You know, it's a big thing when it's like Small Business Saturday or like this month is Black Business Month. And so, you know, it gets popular at certain times to like do that. But we try to maintain a culture of that year round to, you know, use local suppliers as much as possible, use other local small businesses as much as possible. Whether that be trucking, you know, anything. Like if somebody is good and they're down the street or they're around the block or they're in the neighborhood, I'm gonna look at them before I look at somebody in the suburbs or somebody, you know, that might be somewhere else. So just that's been a good practice for us. Building and growing relationships is also important. We have lots of suppliers that really are still with us from since when my husband started the company. And you can imagine that pricing, getting favorable treatment when quantities are low and you really need to get some before somebody else, all of those things come into play when you have rapport and relationship with your vendors and suppliers. And so, you know, as much as you can build and grow those relationships and keep them thriving, you know, if you know, send them cards at Christmas time, it's just little touches to let them know and keep the relationship strong and growing. And then creating trade lines and business credit. Of course, as we all know, our business credit is just as important as our personal credit, and building that business credit is important. And the way you can do that is small trade lines with suppliers that you use all the time. You know, go for a credit app, you pay your stuff on time, and there you go. It's helping boosting your business credit. And so we have a lot of local, like we rent equipment from Sunbelt and all, you know, all these different places. So when you know you're going to need things over and over again, it's good to have those relationships and build those supplier vendor relationships. And then also communicate. So if it's an issue where, say, they send you an invoice and your client haven't paid you yet, and you know they call you, email, instead of ghosting them, you know, just call them and say, hey, look, my client hasn't paid me. It's probably going to be another 30 days. So at least, you know, they know what's going on. And if they have that rapport and that relationship with you, they know, like, you've been paying your bills. I know you're going to eventually pay me. I mean, because at the end of the day, if, like I said, by shop small and local, if they're another small business, we want to get paid. So we have to be good stewards of, responsible paying other people timely as well. And so that's why I'm just saying, pay timely. It's interesting. I looked at a bid today for, I won't say who it is, but it's a company with a lot of money here locally. And I was looking at the payment terms, and it was 60 days. And it's like, why do I need to carry a cost of your job for 60 days? You know what I'm saying? When y'all a big company. So one of the things also is to, when you see a contract,
We do that all the time.
it's ridiculous.
It is ridiculous.
I mean, 30 is hard, but 60?
I've seen 90.
Really?
Yeah,
That's because they think everybody got money.
Right.
Fortune,
Right.
100 companies.
Right.
They got all the money, they still asking for it.
That's how they squeeze out the competition.
True.
That is so true.
They do. They do.
That is true.
They do. They do. And so it's good to just, have your capital stack in order, because,
I have it.
it's really unreasonable to me, but, I was ready to say no, but my husband was like, well, no, let's just. Right.
Wait a minute, they wanted you to say no.
Right, exactly. That's what he said. Don't weed it out now. Like, when we get to the table, we might ask for, because sometimes you can negotiate the contract before you sign it. And a lot of times they'll send you a master agreement before and say, if you have any, changes to the master agreement, let us know. Let's negotiate. So that's the time. Hey, if you don't like something in there, put it on the table. You had your hand up too, right?
Yeah. As far as associations, conferences, locally, are there any suggestions that you can give as far as just us being able to kind of be in the room and understand like the business and pour equity into relationships? Like, are there any like local conferences that go on yearly, annually, or any local associations that you guys might be a part of?
Okay. So Detroit Means Business is a good one. They have a conference. This was the second year that they did it annually. I didn't go this year because I had a conflict, but last year I went, and it was very informative. And so basically they'll show all the resources from the city, but then they'll also have where you can sign up for one-on-one meetings with different. It could be, say, a CPA, a lawyer, a finance provider. Just a range of small business experts that you can sit down, and it's enough time for you to meet with like 4 or 5 different ones to start building conversation relationships. So we found that to be helpful. Detroit started a Detroit contracting conference that they have every year. I think it's actually coming up. So if you're not a vendor with the city, but you want to be, that's a good place to go and kind of find more about their requirements, their payment terms, all of those things. Who else? Prosper Us. They're a community development financial institution. They do a lot of different workshops. I would definitely say Tech Town. Even, a lot of people think it's just for tech, but they have resources, classes, everything. Like, I go to Tech Town at least once a month for a class. Like, it could be finance, it could be something with operations. They always have some kind of resources. So if you just sign up for their newsletter, you'll always have information about what's available.
I talked to Matthew today, from Prosper Us.
Okay.
So we have a meeting set.
Okay. If you have a community development corporation in the neighborhood where your business is, those a lot of times are good resources as well. MEDC, I would say sign up for their newsletter. They have a lot of different things as well. They also have a Pure Michigan platform where if you sign up now, they all have these buyer events, different purchasing events. So you can sign up for any one of those. That's been helpful. But then also I would say if you're interested in getting into the federal space at any level, I would, they're called Apex Accelerators. It used to be PTAC, but they're now called Apex Accelerators. They always have classes. The Detroit one is Wayne State, and it's like contracting, one-on-one marketing to the federal government. They'll help you create a capability statement. Just very, very resourceful. They also have information on how to do business with the state of Michigan. If I think of any
associations,
is it MCA? Let me think about it.
Where they may meet once a month, or
Okay, Jason was here. He talked about his group, right? Okay. There's a CAM, Contractor Association of Michigan.
Okay.
Decent. That's all I can think of right now. If I think of any more, I'll send them to you, Andrew, and add them to the resource list. And insurance and bonding. I know you guys talked about insurance, but of course, in our world, bonding is very important, especially when you're doing public jobs. They always require bonds. Bid bonds, usually 5% of the job that you're bidding, and they're free from your bond company. Payment and performance bonds are usually 100%. And again, a relationship with your bonding agent is really, really, really important. I think we have the same bonding company that we had from when we started. And to ensure that you are in a good position with your bond company, it's important that you have solid and current financials, making sure they're up to date, making sure you're getting that accountant's report. They're very big on the financials. We've also used the SBA bond guarantee program, which has a little bit more higher limits and less restrictions. So if you're kind of entering into the bonding foray, or if you have any issues with your financials, I would highly recommend the SBA bond guarantee program. You can have less assets for a higher bonding rate, basically, with there. And then just talk about your EMR rating. Everybody know what that is? Okay, so the EMR rating is your experience modification rating. It's the rating that's given to you by your insurance company, and it's looked at as sort of a safety factor. And so 1 or above is considered extreme, like more risky. Anything below a 1 is considered good. So say, for instance, I think last year we had 0.88, and today my insurance agent told us we're down to 0.85. So that would be viewed as really, really good. But it's reflective of, not having any safety issues, no workman's comp claims, nothing on our OSHA logs for the past 3 years, anything like that. And so it's also tied to your revenue. So when you project for your workers' comp and your general liability, not general liability, only workman's comp, it's also tied to your EMR rating. But when you try to do pre-qualifications with the GCs, they'll always ask you for your EMR rating for the past 3 years. It's just another indicator of a culture of safety in your organization. So it's important to know what that is.
How would you, I guess it's kind of like a FedEx. How would you, not just create it, but, improve it? Is it just by you doing work, or,
not getting hurt?
So it's more revenue, and it's no safety violations. So the less safety violations you have, the better your rating is going to be.
Right.
So they'll generally ask you for, your safety logs for 3 years, but the EMR actually comes from your insurance company. Right. So they can give it to you today. And they can also, make recommendations to you about how it can be lowered, etc. And I would highly recommend getting that from them, just so you kind of know what it is and if you need to do some work to make it better.
So for someone who's just about to do their first contract, are there insurance companies out there who would give someone an opportunity who's just getting started in the business?
Say the question again, I'm sorry.
For someone that's just getting started in the demolition business, that has not completed a project, and say they're about to do their first one, are there insurance companies out there that would bypass or bypass this EMR rating by chance?
Well, the EMR is going to be tied to your experience. So if you are new to the industry, you probably won't have one yet.
Okay, yes. So what insurance companies would insure me without any experience?
Yeah.
I think some agents,
they'll pay the money.
I would say it's going to be more expensive up front because you don't have a track record to demonstrate, and they're going to view it as very risky, but they'll do it. Yeah. I don't know which, like I said, we've been with the same people for forever, but.
Like a car, so it's the same thing. It's no different, though. So,
yeah.
If you come off that lot, you got to have insurance.
Right.
If you get a new car, you can't leave that car lot without insurance. Before you bid on that job, you got to have insurance.
Right.
So you automatically have to have insurance. So how much is the insurance going to be costing you before I even know what this job is going to be costing you? You don't know. So therefore they can't give you a number. They only can give you this. So,
And they'll look at, if you have, just say for instance, right now, you might have professional coverage or general liability. They'll look at whatever track record of insurance you already have and use that as a basis for determination as well. So if it's good, that might get you in the door a little bit lower than it will be if you would, instead of I just woke up today and I'm starting a company, so, but it still wouldn't be as the same as if you, got 5 to 10 years in the game too.
And I think that's also something that we'd be willing to help pay for, because, in order to work with us, we require everyone to be licensed and insured. It's a big barrier for a lot of people. We understand that. So if you want to use some of your funds to help pay for insurance, happy to do that.
Can I send you that bill?
I just got a major increase, so I'm like.
I get once a year.
I didn't do nothing wrong.
I got about like 3
increase.
insurance though, you know what I mean? So you want the workers' comp, you want the lead liability insurance, or you want the general liability insurance?
Go ahead.
When you was talking about the 8 DPS schools that they tearing down, do they have like a list of them?
I know Foch is coming out. Excuse my fan, and I'm sorry.
She retarded.
Oh, is that what she does?
She turned it off.
Oh, I thought she turned it
She
up.
turned it off and opened the windows.
Y'all didn't never see, she came on there, did that, and did that.
I thought she turned it up.
That's what I felt like. Oh.
She was in good. She thought she was doing something.
Why do we
They
do
said
that?
Foch.
Okay, so Foch
Okay.
just came out. The walkthrough was Tuesday at 10 a.m.
Oh, that's a B.
FOCH.
FOCH? Okay.
Go on Demand Star.
Uh-huh.
That's the bid platform that DPS uses, so you can just sign up for an account and pick Detroit Public Schools for alerts, and then that'll show you all the bids that they have coming up.
So that'll be it for the schools.
Yep, Foch School. Yep.
Okay, so you don't know what the
Really?
Oh,
wow.
I didn't realize there had been demo.
It hasn't yet, but it's one of the first ones on the list. Yep. Okay, so just on addition, I just put these two because I'm noticing now that the pollution liability coverage has been going up and up as a requirement for the past few years. So now the minimum limit for demo for pollution liability is $5 million. You're not gonna get maybe private work, but even one that I saw today that I was talking about, the 60 days, they had $5 million. So normally this would be City of Detroit has some of the highest insurance requirements, and theirs is 5, but it's kind of stayed steady for a couple years. But just want to let you all know, this is it's come down, but when we first had to get it, it was pretty expensive. So just kind of letting you know some trends there. And then also what we're seeing is the umbrella, the access liability coverage. So basically it is an umbrella that goes over your workman's comp, over your general liability. And so say for instance, Wayne County now requires $5 million over everything on the access, and Detroit is 6. So these coverages are really, really expensive, like super duper expensive. So these are some trends. So if you're thinking about getting into demolition or you do demolition, look at those rates for these because they are pretty astronomical. But like you said, the whole insurance bill is out of control. It's one of the highest expenses that we have every year. And that's with no accidents in 25 years, and it's still high. Okay, so that concludes the formal slides, but if anybody has any other questions that y'all didn't ask. Yes.
In regards to funding, so I know that you guys are second generation, but like what he was saying, if you're new, what's your suggestion of somebody to get some form of funding?
All right, so there are a lot more companies doing a lot more. Well, give me a range. So because I know a lot of times they talk about microloans, and those can be helpful, but depending on what your need is, they might not.
They are micro.
So I would say start with a lot of the CDFIs are doing amazing lending right now. Yeah, so Prosper Us has funding. Black Leaders Detroit has actually a fund, and they're not even a CDI. They have loans and grants. Invest Detroit. CDC Finance, I can't think of what it's called. But okay, Detroit Investment Fund.
Like development fund, probably.
Yeah, Detroit Development Fund for sure.
Resource fund, maybe.
Boulder City Match also has a matching program up to $50,000. It's a little weird. You gotta apply for like the match before you actually get funding, so you need to like go through multiple application processes. But that's a grant at the end of the day. It's like we're giving $50,000 loan and then a $50,000 grant.
Okay. Yeah. That's helpful for somebody that's brand new.
Right. But Detroit means business. Like if you go on their website and subscribe to they also have funding opportunities all the time that they're putting out there.
Okay. Thank you. You're welcome.
I just got a quick question. So when it comes to doing the work, making sure that it's environmentally sound, what type of KPIs, key performance indicators, do you guys go off of when you're doing business?
So we basically put our KPIs to match the things that I was talking about with compliance. So it's a lot of asbestos related stuff. So making sure that everybody has the right equipment, the right gear, you know, all of that, making sure that our notifications, like that our processes are in line with staying in compliance. You know, because we don't want to jeopardize our license. We don't want to jeopardize our insurance. We don't want to jeopardize our bonding. So we put financial metrics on our KPIs, of course, because, I mean, you're here to make money. So if you're not making money, you need to reevaluate what's really going on and find out why. We're about to have to start putting staffing on there. We have not had to hire in the past few years, I guess, since the pandemic. We just basically ran a small crew and do all the jobs that we know that this crew can do. But with all the work that's coming up now, we're going to have to scale up our team. So, you know, getting our onboarding process tight, making sure that everybody, you know, has a way to check in and stay compliant. All those things I think are good KPIs to keep track of.
Yeah, I'm talking more specifically environmental, as far as, you know, like when you do work like in Buffalo, right? I don't know after the project is done, you know, what type of, I don't want to say accolades, but what type of feedback do you guys look for from different municipalities, making sure that you're doing the work environment?
Oh, okay, I got you. So we want to pass all our inspections on the first round. That's a good indicator because, I mean, it's not going to shut your project down, but if they got to come out a second or third time, it's going to cost you money. So we trying to get it right on the first time. And everybody on the team got to know what that means. Before we call an inspector out here, everybody needs to know what that job's supposed to look like. Go ahead, I'm sorry.
They have an attitude.
Oh, the inspectors, right?
Yeah, they gotta come back out.
Right, that's true.
You don't know what you're doing.
That's true.
Perception.
Right, that's true. Also, like in Buffalo, we had to go. Our team had to go get the New York asbestos licenses, certifications. Like that stuff didn't carry over, so we had to send our team in advance. And that's again, like you were talking about before, looking in advance to see what the requirements are. In New York, requirements on everything are a lot more crazier than what we have here in Michigan. And we were subbing for somebody, so.
And the mob don't tax y'all too.
Say that again.
The mob don't tax y'all out there too.
They tax the general, I guess. He might have built it into his price, I guess. I don't know.
City that don't get, you don't got that problem with. You can come in as an independent contractor, go up to New York and go to Chicago. Rules change.
What else I would say? Like your the trucking, all the trucking regulations and stuff, making sure that's up to date. You know, you don't tickets with trucks if they overweight are really expensive. So you know, make sure you know what the right load is for your trucks, making sure your tags up to date, your overweight permits are up to date, so you know when you get stopped, you clean. That's very helpful too. So.
Well, I mean, doing the work out there in the field, the only way you're gonna know you did it right, they're gonna cut you a check. If they don't cut you a check, it's because you didn't do that work right. That's how you know that work was done properly. So that speaks for itself. So you might not get an answer like, oh yeah, my work is A1, this and no, they ain't gonna say that. Right. How many contractors we work? So they ain't gonna send out individual notices to your company or your firm and say you was the best firm.
Right,
did
right,
the
no, I'm
best
just
work.
saying, maybe even getting feedback from the community that you're doing work in.
They ain't gonna care, man.
Oh, sometimes they will.
Damn.
You know, sometimes, you know, people will come up and say, we appreciate how you cleaned up after the job, or we appreciate you letting us know, or we appreciate you not starting your job at 7 in the morning, you know. The other thing I would say is record retention is important too. Sometimes the contracts will spell it out for you how long you have to keep records, but I just thought about it because somebody just left a voicemail today from a job we did in, like, I think the housing commission, I think she said 2009 or something. So, I mean, thankfully we had a records, but if we didn't, who knows? So just make sure you're paying attention to, like, your records retention. So in case, like, something come up later, you know, like even with this backfill material, they can come back 5, 6, 7 years later and say, oh, we went in the ground and this wasn't right, or we looked at your records and it was, you know, it wasn't right or it was good. So just make sure that your records retention is solid too.
It is a requirement that you keep a certain record for a certain amount of time.
Yes. Some people will have a time limit, yeah.
I thought it was 7.
But even if you don't contractually require it, just have your own internal, you know, policy for doing that.
And on the topic of like records and reporting and stuff like that, looping it into the conversation about financing, the amount that you're going to be approved to borrow is going to be based on the amount that you report in your books. So that means the amount that you're like paying taxes on. So it's like if you're trying to get ahead by cutting corners, then you're going to shoot yourself in the foot if you're trying to actually grow to any real size.
So you gotta have real numbers.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, and just having your books up to date, like, you know, just not being, you know, a whole quarter behind and having to rush. Just having your paperwork together and tight all the time it saves you trouble. And your lenders, you know, when it's time to, because we just went for new funding this year, and the process can take a long time. But if your paperwork is tight, it don't take that bad. It's not that bad.
Other questions online?
Should I take this off?
Did they go to sleep?
Oh, I didn't put my last slide, did I? But it's
I
what
did
you
too.
said.
No, it's just you.
Just, okay.
Nice card.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was here on the first day, I missed the 2 middle days, and I'm here on the
Any questions online?
Not for me.
All right. Cool.
Well, thank you all for the opportunity, and thank you for your attention and your questions. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you for your time.
Then you go to cash there.
Thank you. Thank you.
94, 93.
You trying to age me right now? 95. What? You went to cash? Okay, the same year though? Okay. What's your name? Maurice. Okay, your face will look familiar.
Hey, matter of fact, y'all sit too close together.
Well, our office is right by King, so it's.
All right, y'all.
Yeah.
Next steps is I'm going to call everyone individually to check in about mentorship and other things. So enjoy the rest of your night. Thank you so much for tuning in and your participation this whole week. Checks are going to go out on Monday. I think I have everyone's W-9s. So thank you all so much, and you'll be hearing from me soon.
Thank you, Andrew. Appreciate your time.